I never had a nickname growing up. I always wanted one, and then I went to college, and I finally got one, and I was so excited. And my favorite part, because when I went to Messiah College, and I played volleyball, so my favorite thing was when they call you out of the locker room, they do your announcement like, Rin Rob! And I was just like, this is awesome. My whole cheering section clapped and cheered, and I felt like on top of the world. It was like, this is the most significant part of my life. And then it was over, and I was like, oh, this wasn't significant at all, and really no one ever is going to remember my name at Messiah College or my volleyball career. So it was kind of a bummer. But there's one person in my life who, when they say my name, it is with such love and tenderness that I could like close my eyes right now and I can hear him say it. And that's my dad. I know. You would think it'd be my husband, but he actually never calls me by my name. It's usually by a nickname, which is only reserved for him. But my father, when he says my name, like if we were in a crowded room and he isn't near me and he says my name, like my ears perk up. Like I can hear him say my name no matter where we are. And that's just because he says it in such a way that it just triggers this, I am loved, I belong, and I'm known by him. So today I want to talk about 4 different people in the Bible that are known by name. And 4 is a lot, so we're going to get through this. If we don't get through it, that's all right. But we're going to try and get through this. All right? It is significant that these people got a call, like called by name and written down in the Bible. Otherwise, we would have no idea who these people are. Right? They'd just be randos. But, just kidding. There we go. The first one we're going to talk about is a man who was obscure, he's little, and he's unseen. And you guys know this. There was a wee little man, and the wee little man was he. Right? I mean, we made a whole song, and we have sung it since childhood about this wee little man. But see, when people said Zacchaeus' name, it was usually like, Zacchaeus. Like spit on the ground. He wasn't liked. No one liked him. He was a tax collector. Why would you do that to us? You take our money. And they weren't like secret about it. When they said his name, it was with malice and hatred. And so we're going to play imagination games, right? When people said his name, it wasn't with love and tenderness. He probably didn't want to have his name said out loud. He was just obscure, some small guy. He was so small, I mean, we know this, right? He climbed up a tree to watch this parade go by because he couldn't want to see over the crowd, right? But then Jesus comes along. And Jesus comes along, and he says this to him. He got to that place. And he looked up in the tree and said, Zacchaeus, you come down. I'm going to your house today. And it wasn't that Jesus was like, hey, there's a guy in the tree. I should hang out with that guy, right? Jesus called him by name. And he said, you are not obscure. You are not little. And I see you. I see you. Now come on down. I want to go. I want to be with you. I think sometimes we can feel like Zacchaeus. We can feel little or obscure or unknown, unseen. And Jesus says, no, I see you. I see you, and I want to be with you. You got to put behind that little thoughts, those little thoughts that you tell yourself, I'm not worth it, because Jesus says you are. I see you. How many of these do we say to ourselves, right? I'm dumb, I make mistakes, I say dumb things, I'm foolish. Can anyone guess who this is? Pretty much a lot of people in the Bible, so you just pick a random name, right? No, this is Simon. Simon. And Simon had a brother, Andrew, and I think the two of them, they always pal around together. Andrew, I think, was probably the brains, the more thoughtful, contemplative one? Because Simon just says what is ever in his head. It just comes out. I feel like there is no filter on this guy. I'm sure his brother spent his entire life, as soon as Peter went, he's like, no, please don't, please just don't. You're going to put your foot in your mouth. You're going to say something stupid. What am I going to do with you? Simon probably talked a lot, so much so that people are like, he's not even worth listening to. As soon as he opens his mouth, they're like, no, whatever dumb thing you're going to say, no. Well, Jesus comes along, and Jesus is like, this is probably one of my favorite things that Jesus says. Jesus looked at him, and he prophesied to him, you're Simon, son of John. I'm going to call you Cephas, or Peter, the rock. Now, I don't know how many people you come up to, and you're like, hey, Kristen, I'm just going to call you Marjorie. Yep, that's a good one. Yep, that just fits. It's just like a Marjorie. Like, this is, who is this guy? Jesus just walks up and he's like, hey, you're Simon, son of John. Let's not do that anymore. Let's go with a whole new name. But the significance for Simon's life to be called Peter, someone who is a rock, someone that you can build something on. This is a whole new thing for him. He was a person who just said whatever. And some of you might be like Simon. When you talk, you're like, oh, shoot, I shouldn't have said that. Someone's going to say something to me, I'm going to make made fun of. I say dumb stuff, I do dumb stuff. And there's some of you who are like not going to say anything at all. Because there might be a little bit of that fear of like, if I say something stupid, everyone's going to make fun of me for it. So I'm just going to like hide away. But Jesus is going to come along, and what Jesus saw in him was his full potential, who he really is. Simon, you are not your mistakes. You're not the dumb things that you say. The fun part is that throughout the Gospels, when Peter does stupid stuff, it's always written afterwards, and Simon Peter, blah, 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 blah. So he didn't stop saying dumb stuff. But it was a gentle reminder of like, Simon, you did it again, but look, this is who you are. Jesus, his last encounter with Peter, remember how Peter was the one who betrayed Jesus 3 times? When Jesus talks to him again, he says, Simon, do you love me? He's like, yes. And he says, Simon, do you love me? Yes. And then he says, Simon Peter, do you love me? And he finishes it with Peter, on this rock, I will build my church. He affirms who Peter truly is. He's not his mistakes. And that's you. When you guys meet Jesus, you are not your mistakes. You are not the sum of all the dumb stuff you've done. You are who he says you are. Just like we sang. You are who he says you are, and he calls you by name for who you really are. Are doubtful, are hopeless, and are lifeless. We know Lazarus from the Bible. And again, we know the stories. Dead guy dies. Everyone's sad. Yeah, dead guy didn't die. He was dead. Right? We know that, okay? Don't do anything, Jesus, because he's been stinking for 4 days. Right? Because he's dead. But when I can imagine that Lazarus, he's sick, and the sisters sent word to Jesus. I mean, Jesus spent a lot of time with this guy. There are a lot of stories of Jesus hanging out at the house of Lazarus, Martha, and Mary, his sisters. Jesus spends time with them. He knows him. And I'm pretty sure that when Lazarus is laying there, like, Jesus, I have seen you do miracles. I've seen you heal people. I've seen you do all this stuff. Where are you? Why aren't you fixing this? Why aren't you here with me? I thought we were friends. I thought we were more than that. I put my whole faith and my whole trust in you. Why aren't you showing up? Do you ever feel that way sometimes? Like you're in the middle of something and you're like, Jesus, where are you? This isn't what you promised. This isn't what you meant this to be. You said you'd be here. You said you'd fix this. We all get a little doubtful. Is Jesus really as good as he says he is? We lose a little bit of that hope of like, wait a second. You said you would give life into the fullest, and this does not feel full at all. In fact, it feels pretty crappy. Nothing's going right. But Jesus shows up. Jesus shows up. And this is that famous part of where like Jesus was overwhelmed, that he wept, that he sobbed. He sobbed that his friend had died. He's crying and grieving with the sisters because he knows this isn't how this is supposed to be. He didn't show up late. And and a lot of times we tell ourselves that. Like, he didn't show up late. He's going to, pull that trick. But it felt like he showed up late. It felt hopeless. And he gets to the tomb, and they're like, don't do that, Jesus. Whatever you're going to do, because you do cool stuff, but not this. He's been dead 4 days. And Jesus is like, he talks to the Father. He's like, for your glory, let this power come through me. And he yells out to him, Lazarus, come out. And that dead guy heard his name. That dead guy heard the voice of his friend call him by name. You could find him in a crowded room, right? Thankfully, it was just one guy in that tomb. But he walked right out of it. Doubt and hope and just death stopped with that one name. Jesus does that for you. Jesus can do that for you. He brings life where there's death. And the last one we're going to talk about is one who's discouraged, tormented, and overwhelmed. How many of you feel that way? Ever? Yeah. Sometimes I have so many thoughts going on in my brain that I'm like, I just can't do this anymore. Too many things going on. And it's tormenting. I can't sleep at night. I just can't put it to rest. I get discouraged by it because I replay things again and again. I replay those negative tapes in my head. If you're not good enough, you're not really that lovable. You're probably not really worth it either. But to the point I just get overwhelmed. And I hear that a lot from the people I hang out with. I hear a lot from our group, our small group. We talk about that, right? We just feel overwhelmed a lot. This is Mary Magdalene. Mary Magdalene was a lady that had 7 demons inside of her. These demons, and again, we're playing an imagination game. I can only imagine what demonic voices would continue to say. And they could say her name, Mary, no one likes you. Mary, you're crazy. Mary, you shouldn't be here with anybody. You should probably go far away, Mary. No one cares about you. You're unlovable. No one will miss you if you're gone. What if you died today? It doesn't matter. No one cares. Until she was tormented by these thoughts that are going in her brain, and they're constantly going. I can imagine if I feel that way and I don't have demons in my brain, that someone who's got a bunch of them in there, that this never stops, that those voices are going off all the time. I don't know if you ever feel that way. Like these voices just never stop. But Jesus comes along and he casts out those demons and he says, be gone. And for the first time, I'm imagining in a long time, it is quiet in Mary's brain. It is quiet in that space. And she finally could think and be at peace because Jesus gave her that. Now, Mary Magdalene there's a ton of Marys, but this is the one who gets mentioned at least 3 times in the Bible, which is pretty significant because women don't get mentioned particularly by name either. But Mary was the one who got demons cast out of her. And then she's again at the cross when Jesus is dying. And then Mary's at the tomb on the 3rd day. And I can imagine that Mary's at the tomb and she's just like, this can't be happening. I mean, he talked about it. I mean, he talked about dying. He says weird stuff about rising from building a church. He makes all these random statements. But I don't understand. He's gone. The disciples are, nowhere to be found. And Mary's been hanging out with the disciples. Mary's been a part of that group that travels around. She knows Jesus. But she gets to that tomb and she's like, what is going on here? Just overwhelmed. And it could be that piece of what's going to happen? If he's gone, am I going to get those voices again? Am I going to be tormented again because he's gone? It was only him that did it. And now I can't even find him. But she gets to the tomb and she's grieving and she wants to prepare the body for burial. She gets there and he's not there. Oh my gosh, now he's not even here. What happened? And then these 2 angels show up and they're like, yeah, he's not here. I'm sure it was with much more power and authority. But I think in Mary's mind, it could have been like, yeah, he's not here. She turns around and she sees this guy. Let's read it from the Bible. It's way better. So Mary turns to leave. And there was Jesus standing in front of her. But she didn't realize it was him. She spent a lot of time with this guy. You think you'd be able to recognize your friend, right? You're dead. You shouldn't be dead because you're here. But she didn't recognize him. And he said to her, dear woman, why are you crying? Who are you looking for? And Mary answered, thinking he was only the gardener. Hey, guy. Sir, tell me. If you've taken the body somewhere, tell me, and I will go. And he says, Mary. He interrupts her, Mary. And turning to face him, Rabbi, my teacher. She knows who he is because he says her name. This chokes me up every time he says her name with such love and tenderness. She can't deny that it's him. Her heart has hope again. She's not overwhelmed. She's at peace in that quiet that he brings her. She knows him, and he knows her and calls her by name. He knows you, and he calls you by name. You may feel obscure or little or unseen. You may feel doubtful and hopeless and lifeless, dumb, full of mistakes, foolish or discouraged or tormented or just overwhelmed with anxiety. But here's the deal, guys. When Jesus steps into your life, you are seen. You are not your mistakes. You are full of life, and you are known by name. And he loves you. He says it with kindness and tenderness. He knows you. and he wants to be with you. So the band's going to come up, and we're going to do 2 songs. The first one is God speaking over you, and you can use this as a quiet, reflective time. Or you can sing along and join in. But this is time for you to remember who you are and that you are known by name.